He never did like hospitals. The doctors say his hearing may come back in time. Stay positive, isn't that what they said?
Yeah. Hello, Brian.
It came in the afternoon post. I've only just opened it. We haven't loaned him back from the hospital. It's £500.
Was there a note?
Nothing.
The state gets all its electoral votes. If they win the state by 1%, they win 100% of the electoral votes. In 2016, more than 4 million people voted for Donald Trump in California. In fact, more people voted for him there than in any other state except for 2. But it didn't matter. Hillary Clinton got more votes there, so she got all 55 of the...
Is a CBS News correspondent. She covers all things Washington, but there you see her inside the debate hall tonight. So, Nicole, let me begin with you. The president has made it very clear that he is not happy with the choice of moderator and the topics. What might be those very public, what might be behind, rather, those very public complaints?
Well, we know that a lot's at stake with this, what the Trump campaign is.
And one of the biggest sources of these very necessary growing pains was Napster. Napster was originally not the name of an app, but a username on IRC. That username belonged to a young programmer named Sean Fanning. And it was on IRC under that username that Sean Fanning would meet his literal partner in crime, Sean Parker, who you might know as Justin Timberlake. Sean Fanning came up with the idea for Napster after his college roommate was complaining about how hard it was to find the music he wanted online. At the time, MP3s could be found if you were looking for them, but it was very decentralized and the selection was very limited. The whole experience just generally wasn't very user-friendly. Sometimes you could find songs on various forums, various websites. You could go on Hotbot and search for some music and maybe you'd get lucky. And there are also things like email networks. Like there's this one I remember vaguely. I might be describing it somewhat wrong at this point because it was on AOL and a lot of that stuff's just gone. But I remember being a part of this one email service where basically a bot would send you a catalog of all the albums they had. You respond with the number of the album. Metallica never actually released this song. In fact, the song that was being played on the radio was an unfinished demo. It was planned for release that summer as a part of the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, so how did it get out? Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica, explains. Cliff Bernstein, Metallica co-manager, calls one day and says, "We were working on a song for this Tom Cruise film, Mission Impossible 2, called I Disappear, and we recorded it in between some touring commitments, and it was going to be held back till the next summer. And so one day I got a call from Cliff saying I Disappear is being played on 20 radio stations across America. And we're like, how the fuck is this possible? And he said, there's something called Napster where people can go and share. And we're like, how the hell did they get I Disappear? It lives in our vault somewhere. And so we traced it back to this company, Napster. And as you did in those days, it was like, well, let's go fuck with Napster then. And what Lars describes as fucking with Napster took the form of legal action against the company. And although Metallica believed themselves to be justified in this action, public opinion turned wildly against them. A lot of people were quick to call Metallica hypocrites for being against file sharing, considering that their rise to fame was largely promoted by tape trading. By fighting against Napster, Metallica not only potentially were squashing something that helped them get to where they were possibly preventing smaller acts from achieving the same success. Critics also pointed to a study conducted in 2000 that showed that people on file sharing services such as Napster actually spent more money on music than people who weren't. And these findings were further evidenced by the unexpectedly high performance on charts by Kid A, Radiohead's album that had been leaked to Napster earlier. Metallica, however, were unmoved by these arguments and even escalated things further when they delivered a list of 300,000 names to Napster. These names belonged to Napster users who had downloaded Metallica songs. Subsequently, these users were banned from Napster, and people saw this as Metallica directly attacking their fans. And fans fought back by relentlessly mocking Metallica, particularly in the form of flash animations on Newgrounds and other websites.
Oh, you post-pubescent boys who have bought, like, our albums and our t-shirts and our concert videos and shirts. Good! Yeah, t-shirts.
And you could probably count Matt and Trey Parker among these annoyed fans, as Metallica was also mocked on South Park.
Look, there's Lars now, sitting by his pool. with him?
This month he was hoping to have a gold-plated Shark Tank bar installed right next to the pool, but thanks to people downloading his music for free, he must now wait a few months before he can afford it.
Lars, however, stuck to his guns and appeared unfazed by all of this. Furthermore, although much of the criticism against Metallica was characterized as them being greedy, Lars maintained that the money didn't matter, but rather he was more concerned about distribution rights.
Right now, it's not about the money. It's really about the control and about the future. The money that's being lost right now in this revenue is pocket change.
And in this same episode of the Charlie Rose Show, Chuck D was there to debate Lars and provided a lot of counter arguments that echoed what the fans were saying.
When cassette recorders came in, it was they're going to rob, they're going to take away from the sales. And this is proven to be contrary to what has happened. Matter of fact, it's a super turbo booster to the industry.
Chuck D, however, was in the minority when it came to music industry insiders. Metallica would eventually be joined by Dr. Dre and a large number of record labels under the RIAA in filing lawsuits against Napster. Napster attempted to fight back in court by saying that copyrighted material present on their service constituted fair use. In particular, Napster named 3 ways that they believe that this material could be used legally. Sampling, where users make temporary copies of a work before purchasing. Space shifting, where users access a sound recording through the Napster system that they already own in audio CD format. And permissive distribution of recordings by both new and established artists. This was how the court responded to these claims by Napster. 1. Sampling, where users make temporary copies of a work to sample it before purchase, which the district court found to be a commercial use even if a user purchases the work at a later time. Sampling was deemed to not be fair use because the samples were in fact permanent and complete copies of the desired media. 2. Space shifting, where users access a sound recording through the Napster system that they already own in an audio CD format. Here, the district court found that neither of the shifting analyses used in the Sony or RIAA versus Diamond Multimedia cases applied in this case because the shifting in neither case included or enabled distribution. The space shifting argument did not succeed because while the shift to a digital format may have been a personal storage use, it was accompanied by making the file available to the rest of the system's users. 3. Permissive distribution of recordings by both new and established artists who have authorized their music to be disseminated in the Napster system, which the district court ruled was not an infringing use and could continue, along with chat rooms and other non-distributory features of Napster. Ultimately, it was determined that despite any possible non-infringing purposes of Napster, Napster was aware of infringing uses, and as such, they were required to block such uses. And Judge Marilyn Hall Patel, who oversaw the case, determined that Napster had to police their service, and policing this service would entail removing every single infringing file. And in the following months, Napster tried to fulfill this order. Napster tried to implement a variety of different ways to block any copyrighted content from their platform. However, none of the techniques that they implemented were satisfactory to the judge. And on July 11th, 2001, Judge Patel ordered that Napster remain shut down until they can guarantee that 100% of copyrighted content would not remain on Napster. This guarantee would never be met, and Napster would remain closed. But at this point, the closure of Napster meant very little for the online P2P file sharing community. A good chunk of Napster's users had already moved on to other services such as Winamx, BearShare, Nutella. Napster died, but in its wake, tons of other services came to fill its void. And this set off a seemingly endless game of whack-a-mole between the music industry and the internet. And although this incarnation of Napster closed forever, this wouldn't be the end of the Napster story. In September of that year, Napster agreed to paying out a $26 million settlement to the music industry. After that settlement, they filed for bankruptcy. And after they did file for bankruptcy, there was a bankruptcy auction in which they were purchased by a company named Roxio for $5.3 million. A bit later in 2003, the very same year that iTunes launched, Roxio relaunched Napster as a paid service. It offered a la carte music purchases like iTunes did, and it also had a subscription service. But this version of Napster didn't have anywhere near the success of its competitors or its original version, and eventually was sold off to Best Buy, who also did not have much success with it. And in 2011, Napster was then purchased by the streaming service Rhapsody. And although Rhapsody used the Napster name in some markets, it wasn't until 2016 that they completely rebranded internationally as Napster. And now to this very day, you can actually go onto Napster and stream music. The fact that that revelation probably surprised you goes to show how successful this person's been. And it's actually kind of funny because despite being the name that brought piracy to the mainstream, today Napster actually gives better payouts to artists than most streaming services. They actually pay out something like 4 times more than Spotify does per stream. But somehow I don't see people rushing to adopt the new Napster. So where are we at with music piracy now? Although some studies claim that music piracy is actually down due to the ease of streaming services, there's other studies that conflict with that. What muddies the waters a bit when looking at these numbers, though, is the fact that between the time that Napster was born and today, there's a lot more people using the internet. I have a feeling that if we adjusted for these new users, we would find that as a whole, streaming has taken a big dent out of piracy. I also think we could contrast this with the film industry and the TV industry and their complete and utter failure to provide convenient, all-encompassing streaming services and see how much of a difference there is. I think the more and more fragmented it gets, the more and more companies want to introduce their own streaming platform, the more we're going to see piracy go through the roof, because at the end of the day, if you're anything like me, you just want something where you can sit down and watch what you want. I'll pay for it if you deliver it, but you're not delivering it. And if we take a look back at that debate between Lars Ulrich and Chuck D, which at this point I think is 18 years ago, I think we'll see that a lot of what Chuck D had to say has come to fruition by now.
For the longest time, the label's dominance had kept the middleman from participating in the music business. They're screaming and crying because they'll have to share the marketplace.
And as for the people behind the controversy, I think you might be surprised to see where things have come. Lars Ulrich has actually expressed regret for delivering all those usernames to Napster. He doesn't regret suing them, but he feels that singling out the fans was a misstep. And despite all that, you're probably going to be even more surprised to hear that Lars Ulrich and Sean Parker are actually now friends. Such good friends that Lars Ulrich actually attended Sean Parker's wedding. How's that for a twist? And that's all for the Napster story. If you like this video, you might also like this one about a gay burglar who pretends to be Mike Portnoy to rob people. Click on that. I'm out of here.
God, she's mid-reassignment. Maybe I should deal with it to be sensitive.
Sometimes your lack of faith in me seriously disappoints, D.I. Drake. Wake up, Gloria. When were you going to say toodaloo to the old Todger then?
Where am I?
In about 6 feet of very brown stuff. You better start talking or you'll be saying goodbye to your gun.
And you probably end up sharing a cell with a great big bloke covered in scars and tattoos who'll call you his bitch. I'm just kidding. It depends.
On what?
Will you promise me something?
Okay.
You look after your mum and dad.
I will.
Good. And be really nice to whoever you end up with. Whether it's Susie or girlfriend.
Won't break his mum's heart. Not her fault she loves him.
What did you tell her?
Gaynor Mason has been arrested for the robbery.
Of course you did. Which is why George Staines never gets sent down. Damn you, Gina.
Why, what have I done now?
Because despite all the macho